I'm Dave Mendelbrot, the CEO of Indiegogo, and you're watching Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hey, I'm Brian Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Dave, thanks for having us to Indiegogo headquarters here in San Francisco. This is awesome.
Brian, thanks so much for coming in.
I usually ask my guests, how'd you get this job?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have a good story about how I got this job. I was the CEO of a company before Indiegogo, and we had a board member that was also on the board of Indiegogo. And every time, and he was based in New York, and we're based here in San Francisco, and my previous company was based here in San Francisco. And every time he would come to one of our board meetings, his name was Louis, I would say, Louis, what else are you doing while you're here in San Francisco? And he would say, oh, I just had the meeting with the greatest company in my portfolio. And at the time I would think, wait, I thought we were the greatest company in your portfolio. And he would tell me, oh, I just met with Indiegogo. They're so amazing. They're doing all this incredible work with entrepreneurs. It was just unbelievable. And amazingly, what happened is our company got acquired, and then Louis introduced me to one of the founders of Indiegogo, and then we were off to the races.
Let's go back in time a little bit to young Dave. What did you want to be when you grew up? Like astronaut, baseball player? I mean, what did you aspire to be?
That's a great question. I think if I could have been anything, I would have wanted to actually be a baseball player. I loved baseball from a really early age. But I wasn't the greatest baseball player, actually. It was pretty clear that for my whole life would pretty much be a dream.
What position did you play? Were you an outfielder?
I was an outfielder, and my favorite position by far is center field. I love those players that play center field, bat leadoff, and usually will do something exciting on the base paths when they're there.
So you're dreaming about baseball, but did you get any guidance? Did you have guidance early on from parents or mentors?
Not so much actually. Very early on, not so much from parents or mentors. My mom was a single mom. Actually, my parents were divorced, and my mom was a school teacher. And she was sort of a generation where the kids that were good students and that were sort of going to go someplace were either going to be doctors or lawyers. And so
the traditional path.
The very traditional path.
Yeah.
So. And it was clear that medicine was not in my future. I wasn't like a big biology fan or anything. So at the time it seemed more like lawyer. And initially I did follow that path.
Where did that take you?
It's interesting. Even before I went to law school, the one thing that did influence me a lot is my dad is a self-made entrepreneur. My parents were divorced, but my dad also lived here in San Francisco.
What did he do?
He still does, actually. My dad, he immigrated here with no college education from Israel, and he started out with a bunch of different odd jobs. He worked in a gas station. He worked as a Hebrew school teacher. He worked in a restaurant. But then he worked in a clothing store, amazingly, about 2 blocks from our office here at Indiegogo. And that was the thing that really took. He liked the experience of being in a store. He liked buying and selling merchandise. So my dad actually saved enough money from working in the clothing store to buy his own sort of remnant inventory. He would buy like inventory where a store had extra sizes.
Yeah, he started Rue La La before it was, or what's the other?
Yeah, something. His was much lower end,
Sure.
but similar idea. And he actually started out by selling clothes in flea markets until he saved up enough money to actually open up his first store. And so when I was a kid, my dad, I don't know how familiar your viewers are with San Francisco, but my dad actually was one of the first sort of store owners, not necessarily one of the first, but an early store owner to actually move into the Mission District. So my dad opened his first store there, I think in 1983, and I used to work in the stores as a kid, and I got a very up-close view of what it's like to actually be an entrepreneur trying to launch a business.
Well, what is it like? I mean, a lot of people who watch this show, they are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or they're working for the man somewhere, plotting their escape, or they have their side hustle. But what is it like? Describe the entrepreneur life.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's sort of 2 key things that I noticed about the entrepreneur life that are very related to each other. One is, when you're the entrepreneur, you're responsible for everything. So my dad, he was responsible for, in the stores, he had to make sure he was buying the right merchandise. He had to make sure somebody was there to open the store and close the store. He had to make sure that the books were being kept, and he was paying the state sales tax that we were collecting on all the merchandise we were selling. When you're the entrepreneur and it's a very small business to begin with, you are on the hook for everything. So one of the things that's just really noticeable is the range of things that you're responsible for. And the other thing that I've noticed, and don't think I really appreciated until later in my career, was that when you're the sole entrepreneur, there's nobody else telling you that it's all going to be okay. When you're in a good sized company, maybe you hit a tough quarter and you've got a CEO or you've got a CFO, and other people are saying, well, we had a tough quarter, but here's all these strong indicators, and here's why we know our business is going to be strong in the future. When you're a sole entrepreneur, you don't have that. So
yeah, I mean, it's like football versus track and field, solo runner, or tennis maybe is another good example, or you've got a whole team to rely on where.
Absolutely. It's like soccer player, sole tennis player. Soccer player, if the team is strong, maybe they'll carry you for a game, where you're not your own, but where you're not at your best. But a singles tennis player, it's all you every time.
Yeah.
And so, for a period of time when I was working with my dad, when I was in college, I would live with him during the summers, and the bedroom that I would sleep in was right below basically the path between his kitchen and his bedroom. And many nights I would hear him at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning just pacing that walk back and forth with all of the thoughts of all of the things that needed to be tended to keep that store going.
I'm curious, did you pick up on any rituals that he had, any habits or routines?
Yeah, I think I did. One thing that I picked up on that I still feel I use to this day is when you're a sole entrepreneur, you're hyper vigilant about what you are spending money on and how you are, as I describe it to our team here at Indiegogo, I like us to not think about what we're spending on, but I like to think about what we're investing in. And when you're a sole entrepreneur, whatever you're spending is money that is very directly out of your pocket. So it needs to be a really good use of those funds. And what I really realized in that experience is how much it's all, I don't know how to describe it, so much of business is pure dollars and cents. Are you able to deliver a service or products or whatever you're delivering that actually delivers enough more value to consumers to justify the expense that it costs in creating that thing and creates value for them and therefore value to you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, there's so much there I want to dig in deeper and ask you. Maybe I'll go this route, which is, do you think entrepreneurs are born or are they made? Is this something we can learn?
That's a really good question. I don't think entrepreneurs are necessarily born. In some ways, I actually think they're made. Sometimes by, how would I describe it? In my dad's case, and I've seen this with a lot of entrepreneurs, by a lack of alternative options. Like I said, my dad didn't have a college education. His English wasn't very good when he immigrated here. And I think at some level, he recognized that if he was going to be able to build a successful life for himself, he was going to have to do it himself. It would be hard for him to get a job that was going to allow him to sort of rise up at some level, given his educational background and other options. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they're sort of motivated. In a lot of ways, I think it is environmental. There's something that is missing to them that they feel like needs to be created.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask too is, and you're very close to all of these amazing campaigns. We're sort of seeing it here, a few of the success stories and the history, chronology. And you guys were the first crowdfunding platform, really first to crystallize all of that, and it became a movement. What are some of the key components that you see as these success factors, make or breaks when people are launching these campaigns?
And one is, it always starts with a really good idea, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the most creative idea, but it's somebody that has an idea for delivering something that's gonna meet a market need, something that that people will want.
I was going to ask, so is there any research on your end about products versus services, or like films or causes, or is there like a sweet spot?
Yeah, for Indiegogo, there's definitely a sweet spot with products. There's a real challenge for product entrepreneurs, which is that the life cycle, the time that it takes to create a product is actually pretty long. And so the way I describe it is, for a typical product entrepreneur, they have this path that they go down where they get a great idea, and maybe they're successful in pitching that idea to investors, and they raise money, and then they hire a team and they start working on building that product, and then they build that product, and then and while they're doing that, they're getting like distribution, and they're finding a way to get that product into the retail store. And then all the way at the end of this cycle, the product is in a store, and only then do they get to find out whether there's an actual market need for their product. In the meantime, all this time, energy, money has been invested in every stage up until that point. What's really wonderful for entrepreneurs about Indiegogo is that they get the opportunity to get their idea in front of many people very early in the development cycle. And what that allows them to do is to identify whether there's a real market need very early on. And then that can change the level of effort that they put into it. It changes their ability to get additional outside sources of funding, their ability to get distribution or retailers to carry their product. So for us, the sweet spot has really been product entrepreneurs, and it's been because of the way it really changes the way they can validate that they've got a good product and take it to market.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, everything and nothing has changed in the last 10, 15 years. But really, I think we underestimate the power of crowdfunding, where it really can be a place where you can activate your fans and friends, or discover a whole new movement organically. But back in the day when I worked for the studios, I used to hire. I had a sizable P&L, and we would hire these focus groups to come in and tell us what they thought about the key art for the movie, and we'd pay tens of thousands of dollars for this. When now you can basically crowdfund the same kind of idea, take people's pulse, and you have minimal risk and minimal dollars spent up front.
Absolutely. The problem with the focus groups is that the focus groups are people saying, yes, I would buy that, or no, I wouldn't buy that. What they love about Indiegogo is that people are actually demonstrating their demand with actual dollars. So they feel like the information that they're able to get about the potential demand for that product is so much more accurate than what they would get in focus groups, where people are not actually transacting with respect to the product.
So let's drill deeper now, because this space is mature enough now that everyone watching is like, yeah, I get crowdfunding, and I've used Indiegogo or some of the other competitors in the space. But tell us what we don't know. What are we undervaluing or underestimating or not seeing in terms of an opportunity?
It's not even really the funding that companies are getting, or entrepreneurs are getting. The really valuable thing that entrepreneurs are getting is that ability to connect directly with their customers. If you're a product entrepreneur and you're selling through traditional channels, you might have a distributor and a retailer between you and your ultimate customer. So when you then later want to connect with that customer and find out what they like about the product and what they don't like about the product, or if they return the product, why they return the product, you don't have an ability to do that. If you're selling your product, on Amazon or in Walmart, you just get a bunch of returned product. You don't know who your customer is. What's been wonderful about a platform like Indiegogo, and specifically what's been wonderful about Indiegogo to entrepreneurs, is that it enables them to connect directly with their ultimate customers. And those customers become not only good sources of information, but then they also become evangelists for those products when they love those products.
Yeah, that's a super good point. If you want to do any type of marketing or advertising for your product or service, you've usually got to go out and rent someone else's space to get their attention. You know, if I want to do something on national TV, I've got to rent that space, you know, pay for expensive advertising, basically borrow their audience to have my share of voice, and then I'm out. With this, I get to keep them, and I guess, and to your point, maybe it's subtle, but it sounds like it's a lot more focused on the quality of customer, fan, follower, evangelist than it is the quantity. Although, you know, you could have a sizable quantity audience still. If you've got, say, 1,000 people who are willing to put $1,000 down on something, that's $1 million right there.
Absolutely. And that's $1 million right there. And of course, many of the most successful entrepreneurs on Indiegogo, you know, will raise in the millions of dollars with the campaigns they run here. But in addition, you know, again, they're getting that ability, the entrepreneurs getting that ability to connect directly with those customers. So they can check in with those customers and say, you know, now that we're working on the, you know, we've gotten further with the product, we're thinking about these 6 colors. You know, what do you think about these colors? Or we're trying to decide between putting this feature in the launch version of the product versus this feature in the launch version, and they have that ability to connect. You know, a quick side story, we had Whirlpool, which is actually famous for washers and dryers, launched a campaign on Indiegogo, which they launched for a new composting appliance that would be in their kitchen. And because it was such a new product line for Whirlpool, what they were most excited about was this ability to, you know, connect directly with the people that would ultimately buy this product, even though it wasn't going to be released, you know, for months. And I asked them, you know, in a conversation with them, I asked them, well, if it wasn't for Indiegogo, you know, if you were just selling this product, you know, at a Best Buy or, you know, at a Walmart or some other store, how would you have gotten this information? You know, how would you have connected directly with the customer? And you know what they told me is they would do it with those warranty cards, which I think I believe less than 15% of the ultimate buyers of products actually send back. Now they're getting contact information for every single person that buys their product, and they're getting it much earlier in the life cycle of that product.
Well, yeah, you said it. I'll just underscore it again. So you can use that list respectively in many different ways, whether it's remarketing or using it as a listening tool to poll your audience or ask for future iterations, or how are we doing, or customer service, or just keep contact. Direct to consumer is where it's at.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I think people miss. People see Indiegogo as a crowdfunding platform. You know, you'll raise all this money, but it's much more of a platform, just like you described, to enable entrepreneurs to go direct to consumer.
Well, that's why Blockbuster Video's out of business and Netflix is king right now, is because it's direct to consumer. That's a no-brainer. What are people doing wrong?
That's a really good question. I think, you know, what people are doing wrong is, you know, being an entrepreneur is hard. And I think the thing on crowdfunding, you know, what people are doing wrong is sometimes entrepreneurs will have this idea of, okay, I'll just launch my campaign on Indiegogo or potentially on some other crowdfunding platform, and it'll just sort of magically take off. Yeah. And it's not really like that. You know, what entrepreneurs really should be doing is starting to build a fan base early on. You know, they should have a website. They should be you know, collecting email addresses of people that are interested in their product, give people a little bit of information, get their friends and family interested, so that when they launch a campaign, it isn't a cold start. They're not starting from zero. They've got people that are already interested who can start to see what their campaign is about and hopefully promote that campaign to their friends and family.
Give us a range, a percentage, you know, of, you know, we have a certain goal at 100%. About what percentage of goal should we sort of prime the pump, you think?
I think the best thing to do is to try to prime the pump at about 20 to 30%. The most successful campaigns on Indiegogo have already built some kind of following before they start. Like the most successful campaign ever on Indiegogo in terms of the amount of funds raised that was distributed to the entrepreneur was a campaign for a product called the Flow Hive. And the Flow Hive, amazingly, was, you know, a father and son team developed a beehive that actually used better technology than beehives of the last 100 years. And they, even in their case, before they launched on Indiegogo, they were already fairly active in like news groups and so forth of people that were in, with people that were in the Beehive community. They were starting to let them know what they were working on and what they'd be launching. So when they launched, they were able to have a lot of momentum out of the gate, and that carried them forward tremendously.
Let's stay on that theme of collaboration a little bit. Early, we're filmmakers, we're also doing a fair amount of editing, sitting down, and early on, I realized that sitting is kind of like the new smoking. Like, it was very bad to have a sedentary lifestyle. I searched around for a solution, and I found these stand-up desks. And I should say, our partners now, Veridesk, kind of found me because they heard me, tweeting about it, and they listened. And now Veridesk, those stand-up desks, and they make other things to set up your office, are one of our partners and sponsors. But it's been a lifesaver. As we look at this campus or we look at this office building, it's laid out in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of hear it from you, how you have been deliberate about the openness or the collaboration, or what have you done in the active workspace to make it your own and to help support those values?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We've done quite a few things, actually. One is, interestingly, we've given everybody the option of having standing desks, I'll mention, because we want our team to be active. We've created an open environment to enable better collaboration between different people. We've invested in games throughout the office to bring people together. So we have a ping pong table and a foosball table and the shuffleboard, which we have a lot of very active users of here at Indiegogo. The main thing that we've done actually is that we've, without sounding too harsh, we've made it, let's call it frowned upon for people to eat at their desk. So if people want to go outside and eat, they can do that. But we bring in lunch 3 days a week, and if you're here eating lunch, the expectation is not that you'll take your lunch back to your desk, but rather we've organized our office to have long tables that enable people to eat together and collaborate. And you'll often see, even if a meeting room is full, a lot of times people will be collaborating in different ways at the tables at the sort of general tables that we've set up. So we've tried to create an environment that really encourages collaboration in many ways.
What sort of benefit does that yield? What's the result?
It's a really good question. The benefit that it yields, and we see this over and over, we do to better understand how our employees feel about working at Indiegogo, we do we call them Net Promoter Score surveys. So we ask our employees questions that help us understand how happy they are working at Indiegogo and how engaged they are, really more importantly. And over and over again, and I've been at Indiegogo about 5 years now, and this has been true the entire 5 years I've been here. We have a question where we ask our employees, what is the best part of working at Indiegogo for you? And some companies, people say, oh, the best part is, getting to work in technology, or the best part is having an impact, or the best part is, the office, or whatever it is. And what people tell us every single time, and it's been this way for 5 years, is that the best part of working at Indiegogo is getting to work with the people here. People feel very connected to the team that we're working with, and I think the ways that we've invested in collaboration have really created a sense of camaraderie here that's quite unique.
What's your advice to people who are launching campaigns? You launch a campaign and it has a certain term, and then it expires, and you make your goal or you don't, or you have the various options to choose from inside Indiegogo where you can take some of it or all of it or none of it. Do you recommend, if you fail once, try again? And if so, when do you try again and how often?
I think it's really worth trying to understand why it didn't work the first time. Sometimes it's, people will say, we're very excited about this product, but the price is too high. Or we're very excited about this product, but we didn't have confidence that you would be able to actually build this thing that you were going to build.
The hoverboard.
The hoverboard, we had, it's nice, I just saw it in the store, but about 4 years ago, I believe it was, there was a product called Jibo on Indiegogo, which actually came out of the MIT Media Lab, and it was a robot that wouldn't walk around your house, but it would actually sit on a countertop and talk to you. And you could tell from the video that it was a very complex undertaking to get that to get that, to get that robot to interact with you the way it would interact. You could ask it to take pictures, you could do all kinds of things. And it came about at a time that was even before like the Amazon Echo or other things that got us more accustomed to talking to things and getting something, having that intelligence to give us a worthwhile response. And you could tell that, that was going to be a hard thing to pull off. It would have been understandable for people to say, I'll wait and see if that product is ultimately made. But, in that case, the product was manufactured. I just saw it in a store in my local mall last weekend. I was quite excited to see it. And wonderfully, the backers that backed it on Indiegogo were able to get that product at a much lower price than the people that are buying that product in the stores right now. Sure.
So it sounds like your answer is it depends.
The great thing about Indiegogo is that you get the chance to connect with your customers directly, and I think it's really important to really do that connection and learn. If you have an unsuccessful campaign, learn about why, try to understand why, and then absolutely take another shot at it.
The other thing, you want to support your creators or your inventors or the people that start campaigns. How are you helping shepherd these campaigns? What are you doing to help educate them and coach them and make sure that what they do is successful? Because I would assume, if they have a failure rate and they bounce, they may never come back, or maybe they bounce to a different platform.
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's primarily two things that we're doing to really help entrepreneurs all the way through the life cycle, we call it. The first thing, and Indiegogo has been doing this now for years, and it's a key differentiator between us and other platforms, is that we have a team of campaign strategists that will advise many of the larger campaigns on what they need to do to be successful. They'll advise them on perk selection and perk pricing, and we call it the pitch text, but it's basically the description on the website of what that campaign is and what it's about.
How do you get access to that kind of help, that level of help?
You basically you work with somebody on our team. You can reach out to somebody on our sales team or through customer happiness. We call it customer happiness to Indiegogo, and we will provide a lot of advice. We've also put a lot more advice on the website because we recognize for a lot of entrepreneurs, they may not have run a crowdfunding campaign before. And so the more we can share best practices, the more successful they're likely to be.
I just want to be clear on that. So there's a paid service where you could go, the next level up and pay for help like a consultancy.
There is,
yeah.
And there's third-party services which we can recommend, and we also offer those services at Indiegogo.
Okay.
From our standpoint, offering those services is much less about being a new business for Indiegogo. What we're really, a big passion for us is ensuring that those entrepreneurs are successful.
Well, some people need I don't want to call it hand-holding, but they need the guidance because maybe they're new in the space, or maybe there's some nuances or intricacies they don't understand.
40% of the transactions on Indiegogo, meaning the connections between an entrepreneur and their ultimate consumer, are cross-border. It's an entrepreneur in one country that's connecting with a customer in another country. In the last couple of years, we've had a huge influx of entrepreneurs from China that are looking to reach, U.S. consumers or consumers in Western Europe, let's say, with products that, from brands that those users, might not be familiar with. But in reaching English-speaking or, other language-speaking consumers, they may need help with their campaign video because, what works for marketing a product in China may be different than what works for marketing a product in the U.S. Or they may need help. There's no Facebook legally, allowed in China. So Facebook marketing can be a really effective way to build your customer base even on Indiegogo. So they might need help with doing Facebook or other social media marketing here in the U.S. So we have services to help them with that as well. In a lot of cases, they may be very experienced entrepreneurs, but something about, to try to successfully reach consumers here, they have some challenges.
It makes perfect sense. So wrapping this up, how about some final words of advice to entrepreneurs about being successful?
Yeah.
And maybe in the context of what we should be measuring as success metrics. Sometimes we fall into this, okay, was it profitable or not? But maybe there's other ways to look at success. Final words.
Yeah, great question. I think when you're an entrepreneur, you start with this, dream that you're going to ultimately build this huge business. But I think, my advice to early stage entrepreneurs and what we see with the successful entrepreneurs is to just always be moving it forward. It doesn't have to be something that's huge right out of the gate. Get to the point where you get your first customers and you've got the first version of your product out. Once you have that, once you've got a product out, you've proven to customers that you can actually deliver something, and you've got hopefully happy customers with your product, the next one will be easier than the last one was, and the next one will be even easier than that. And before you know it, you'll get there, but you need to just keep making progress all the way along.